Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Torah studies for the Torah portion of Bo. In this class, we're going to be analyzing the Rebbe's unique approach to the commentary of Rashi. We're going to learn the layers of interpretation, the depth, and of course, practical application. As always, we're going to begin with the rules that we're going to be focusing on in this class. Rule number one. The Rebbe tells us that there are no superfluous words in Rashi's commentary. If something seems superfluous, we misunderstood Rashi's intent. Rule number two. When necessary, Rashi quotes other biblical passages to support his contentions. However, he rarely provides commentary or context for those passages. When he offers such commentary, it fills a gap that might otherwise not be filled. And rule number three. When Rashi cites a biblical passage, he prefers to use the nearest one to the passage under discussion. To the Parsha. In the Parsha, we are learning all about the story of the Exodus from Egypt. The Exodus from Egypt is such an important event. It is a mitzvah that we remember it on a daily basis. But there is a specific time of the year where we have a holiday called Pesach, where we have a Seder, and at the Seder, we ask the four questions. We address the four sons. Where does all this come from? Because in this week's Torah portion, God tells us 4 different times that it is a mitzvah for us to retell the story of our Exodus from Egypt. 4 times equals 4 sons. We're going to begin today's class with the simple son. So the Parsha says, and it will be tomorrow when your son will ask, what is this? This is the question of the simple son. The simple son is not offering a deep and profound question. He very simply says, what is this? If you are just looking at the verse, you don't even have to be Rashi to know that something is off about the verse. And it will be tomorrow when your son will ask, what is this? Mm-hmm. What is the deal with the word tomorrow, right? Why does the Torah include the word tomorrow if the passage reads well without it? So here we have Rashi's comment. Rashi says, tomorrow when your son will ask, there is an immediate tomorrow and a tomorrow not the day after the Exodus. Remember the verse we just quoted says, when your child asks tomorrow. Rashi says it doesn't mean tomorrow, like literally when the Jews are in Egypt tomorrow. It means in the distant future, when your child will ask, then you're going to tell them the whole story. It's not literal. But the Rebbe looks at this Rashi and says, wait a minute, I got a lot of questions. We have to analyze this Rashi. Question number 1. Why does Rashi mention that some tomorrows are immediate if his point is that this passage discusses a different tomorrow? Rashi could have said very simple. What does the word tomorrow mean? It means in the distant future. Straightforward. End. Conversation is over. We understood perfectly what's going on. Why does Rashi say sometimes it's an immediate future, sometimes it's a distant future? This means a distant future. Question number 2. Why does Rashi provide an additional example of a tomorrow? Example in the book of Deuteronomy. In the book of Dvarim, which is in the category of Torah of the Tanakh, right? It's in the Torah section. It's in the same section, the 5 books of Moshe, as this Parsha. The word machar, tomorrow, is used. Use an example from there. Why does Rashi go outside of the 5 books of Moses to the works of the prophets to cite an example? And now question number 4. Why does order to answer the question, we need to define the term tomorrow. In Hebrew, the word is machar. Now, I'm going to give you a definition of tomorrow. I want you to let me know if you agree with this definition. It comes from Rabbi 𝗧cie𝗱𝘆, very prominent is tomorrow, because that's what me'acher, which means from after. If you want to put it all together in a nice package, the word machar means tomorrow. However, Rashi tells us that if you actually look at the literal definition of the word machar, it could mean anything after the present is machar, tomorrow. That means anything that's after this moment is after this moment, which means tomorrow. So on a very strict literal translation of the word tomorrow can actually even mean today. And we can understand that readily, that if you are involved with something and then you're done, right? What you were doing was in the past. It happened already. It's done already. So what you're doing now, it's like the tomorrow compared to what you were doing before. So Rashi tells us that the word machar is able to mean today. It doesn't actually have to mean tomorrow. It just means after this moment. In the words of the Rebbe, let us preface our explanation by elaborating on something we explained several times about Rashi's approach to his commentary on the Torah. Rashi always opts for clear language that can be readily understood without examining the sources from which he draws his language. Even students who can only grasp a word's most straightforward meaning, as our sages of blessed memory described it, the 5-year-old who studies the Torah, should also be able to understand Rashi. This means that when Rashi quotes a phrase from our sages, he intends it to be understood in the simplest way possible. This is true even if our sages intended the phrase in a specific way. This applies to our situation. When Rashi writes there's an immediate tomorrow, he means the word immediate in the most basic way. This means that tomorrow does not refer to the day after today, but the moment after the current event concludes. It is immediate. It is still today. But since it comes after the present event concludes, it is considered tomorrow. So the Rebbe explains that the word machar, tomorrow, actually has 3 interpretations. Tomorrow can mean today, but after we're done with what we're doing now. It can mean actually tomorrow, or it can mean in a distant future. Rashi says, how do we interpret the word machar, tomorrow, in our biblical verse? Machar refers not to the day after today, but to the translation of the word machar in its literal sense. That the word tomorrow refers to an immediate tomorrow, since the sun from that time would have seen and known about the Exodus, the plagues and the dough that a hero in the current war in Gaza, would there have to be a command that tomorrow the family should share and discuss it? No, they're literally living it. So obviously it means that it's talking about something in the future. So how do we understand this all? How do we break it down? What's the difference between tomorrow that's imminent and tomorrow that's not? The answer, as we've been explaining, is that there are two tomorrows, right? Oh, sorry. Years after the Exodus, a child who has never heard of it might ask what the holiday is all about. When they ask, share the story, history, tradition, and rituals with them. So again, Rashi says, what is the Torah telling us when it says tomorrow? It doesn't mean the day after tomorrow, and it doesn't mean today. It means years later, right? In the distant future, there are going to be people who never heard of the story, and they don't know what it's all about. It is our job, it's our responsibility to share that with them. Now let's analyze this, right? Rashi uses the word distant is tomorrow. Tomorrow can be today if I'm so disconnected from the events of today that it's as if they're in the past and what happens in 2 minutes is tomorrow. Rashi is telling us there's a tomorrow that has nothing to do with time. Time is not the relevant issue. The issue is how connected I am to the event. So Rashi tells us there's an immediate tomorrow. An immediate tomorrow means I am disconnected to the event, even though it's happening right now, it happened today. But I'm so disconnected to it that it's like I'm already tomorrow. That's how the view it is. However, Rashi says, when we understand the immediate tomorrow in this terminology, a distant tomorrow doesn't have to do with time either. The expression of machar that the Torah is using, the expression of tomorrow that the Torah is using, has nothing to do with time. It has to do with being disconnected, right? Nothing to do with time. There could be a person who today is disconnected, or there could be a person who is disconnected a lot later. In the words of the Rebbe, Rashi begins his comment with the words, there is a tomorrow that is immediate, demonstrating that tomorrow is not a measure of time, but a unit of time cut off from the past. This allows for tomorrow to begin in the same day, and it is called tomorrow because it comes after the present event has concluded. Once this is established, we can understand that tomorrow in the distant future is not just a future day, but an era from which the present is completely cut off. So the Rebbe shows us what is Rashi trying to say? Why does the Torah use the terminology tomorrow? Because the Torah is teaching us prophecy, right? The Torah is essentially prophesizing that there is going to come a day where the exodus from Egypt is so irrelevant, is so completely disconnected from some Jews, it is as if they have no connection to it at all. I often think of this idea. He tells us that when the Torah uses the word machar, it is referring to not time, it's referring to disconnection. This is a radical interpretation. Because if I would ask any person in this room who's on the class right now, if I would tell you tomorrow, now one of you would say to me, well, there's an immediate tomorrow and there's a distant tomorrow, and we know what tomorrow means. Rashi says, no. This means not tomorrow in time, it means in connection. Because Rashi is coming up with such a unique idea, it's a radical interpretation, Rashi has to prove to you that there's a Torah source, there's a biblical source for that interpretation. He cannot quote the word machar in the book of Devarim. Why? Because that word is used in the normal context in the book of Devarim. Time. So what does Rashi do? He has to quote a verse from the book of Joshua where the word machar means not time, but it means disconnected. And therefore, he gives you the context. What's the context? The context is the tribe of Gad and Reuven. What happened to Gad and Reuven? They're about to enter the land of Israel, and they say, we do not want to enter the land of Israel. We want to stay on the east side of the Jordan. It's better land for our animals. Moshe says, are you guys crazy? Do you know how demoralizing this is going to be for the Jewish people? You don't want it. We're 40 years in the desert, and you don't want to go in? And he said, Moshe, don't worry, we're going to fight first. And the tribe of Gad are the legendary warriors of the Jewish people. Their heroism, how they helped conquer the land, absolute legends. So the tribes of Gad and Reuven and half of Manasseh, they're on the other side of the land. However, they're still connected to the Jewish people. Because what do they do on the holidays? On Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot? They go to the temple. When they need to offer sacrifices, they go to the temple. So even though they live outside the land of Israel, they are so connected, they're deeply connected to the land of Israel. But then something happens. The book of Joshua tells us that the tribes across the Jordan have built 2 monuments. Monuments that to the Jews living in the land of Israel look like idols. And the Jewish people say, our brothers and sisters over the Jordan, they lost the plot. They have begun to worship idols. They are so disconnected from the Jewish people. We're going to march with our own armies and we're going to take them down. So what happens in the book of Joshua? So this is the response of the tribes of Gad and Reuven. And had we not built this, we would be afraid that tomorrow your children, again, hear the word tomorrow, your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the God of Israel? After all, God has placed the Jordan as a boundary between us. So you, children of Reuben and Gad, have no part in God. In this way, your children might cause our children to cease fearing God. Therefore, we said, let us build an altar for ourselves, not for burnt offering or sacrifice. Rather, it is a witness between us and you and the generations that will come after us, as a reminder to worship God with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and peace offerings this way, tomorrow, your children will not tell our children, you have no part in the God of Israel. So Rashi quotes the book of Joshua, where what is the concern with the word tomorrow, that you know what's going to happen tomorrow? The tribes of Gad and Reuben are worried that tomorrow, that means there's going to be a time where the Jews on the east side of the Jordan feel so disconnected from their brothers and sisters who are living on the west side of the Jordan that they might say, what have you to do with the God of Israel? There is a river dividing us. There's a river separating us. We have no connection. They have no memory to their ancestors who were the mighty warriors from the tribe of Gad who conquered the land of Israel. So why did they build the monuments? To make a statement to their children that we absolutely are connected to the land of Israel. The land of Israel is our people. So this is why Rashi had to choose this example from the book of Joshua. So the story of the descendants of Gad and Reuven is the only other text in the Torah where machar is used in a context that includes both elements, a distant future completely cut off from the present. All right, now we can answer all of our questions. The first question the Rebbe said, why does Rashi mention that some tomorrows are immediate, if his point is that this passage discusses a distant tomorrow? The answer, Rashi begins with the immediate tomorrow to demonstrate that in this case, the distant tomorrow is wholly disconnected from the present. Right? So he teaches us the idea that it's not about time, but it's about disconnection. The second question, why does Rashi provide an additional example of a tomorrow that refers to the distant future? The Rebbe answers, Rashi must cite proof for this translation because it is a radically different interpretation of tomorrow than conventionally offered. The third question, if Rashi must bring proof, why does he cite a passage from the book of Joshua when there's a perfectly good example in the book of Devarim? The Rebbe answers, Rashi can't use other passages that employ the word machar because they don't use machar in this unique context. In the book of Devarim, it's an issue of time, right? This here, it's an issue of connection. And finally, why does Rashi add that the passage he cited was written about the tribes of Gad and Reuven? Rashi must provide context for the verse he cites because otherwise the student would not know why Rashi insists that Machar in this passage refers to this unique type of tomorrow. So this is the Rebbe's beautiful analysis on Rashi, which gives so much clarity, so much depth, so many layers of interpretation to Rashi's comment. And in the context of the biblical verse, the Torah is addressing the simple son. The simple son is the son who is so disconnected from his Judaism, or he's so distanced from his Judaism. What does the Torah say? How do you deal with the son? You have to tell the son. So what do you do with the son? You tell them that we have a history. We have a past. There was an in this class. Today, unfortunately, there are so many who are distant. There are so many Jews who feel that they're disconnected from their own Jewish life. Again, of course, I gave the example of the anti-Israel Jewish activists. But there's a message that is found in the story of the Exodus, specifically within the four sons. There's a beautiful commentary about the four sons that says, who is the wise son? The wise son represents the Jew from the old country, right? The Jew who was born and bred, observant, practiced Torah and mitzvahs, the Jew from the old country. Who is the wayward son? The wicked son? This is the son who rejects everything that his father stood for. This is the son who rebels against the history of the Jewish people. Why? Because this son is modern. This son is progressive. This son embraces the Enlightenment movement, completely rebels against the father. Then you have the simple son. Who is the simple son? The simple son was raised by the wicked father. That means he was not given a proper Jewish education. He doesn't know Aleph from Beis. But what does he know? He knows his Zaidi. He knows his Zaidi. Who is his Zaidi? His Zaidi knew a little bit of Torah and mitzvahs. Maybe his Zaidi even insisted that he get a little bit of a bar mitzvah. So the simple son comes to the Seder. He's there. He doesn't know what's happening, but he has a warm feeling for his Zaidi. And then who is the fourth son? The fourth son is the one who doesn't even know how to ask, because the fourth son never even saw his Zaidi, right? He never even saw a Jew who took Judaism seriously, right? Who observed Torah mitzvahs that was relevant to him on a daily basis. So he comes to the Seder, he doesn't even know, he doesn't even have a clue, he doesn't even have the ability to ask. Now, of course, what is the job, the mission of Chabad? We got to reverse the trend, right? We got to reverse the trend, and thank God with the Chabad centers all over the world and on college campuses, so many Jews are being reached. But the Rebbe said you could actually look at these four sons, and there's something that is so beautiful about the nature and the character of the Jew. It says, look at the fourth son. The kid does not even know how to ask. But where is he? He's at a Seder, right? These are the four sons who are at the Seder. Look how powerful is the soul of a Jew. The soul of a Jew is so real, it's the core, it's the very essence of a Jew, that even a kid who never saw a Seder, even a kid who comes to the Seder and his mouth is so closed because it's so foreign to him, that he doesn't even have the ability to ask a question. Nevertheless, where is the Jew? He's there. Because the Jew belongs at the Seder. His soul is propelling him, his soul is pushing him. And there are so many Jews that are like this, it's quite inspiring. Right? There's a professor that I follow online, a very proud and public atheist. Very proud and public atheist. Yet what happened this week? This week was his son's bar mitzvah. And it took the bar mitzvah took place on a weekday. It was either a Monday or a Thursday. I don't know which day. I think it was probably Monday. And what did his son do? His son read from the Torah wearing tefillin, and the father, the big professor, the public atheist intellectual, he's sitting there wearing tefillin, and he's so proud about his son's bar mitzvah. Makes no sense. If you think it's all a joke, what are you doing there? But the fourth son is there because the soul is so powerful, the soul is so deep, and every Jew belongs there, therefore the kid is there. Now, there has been in recent years a trend to have a fifth son, to have a fifth element at the Seder, which what is that? An empty chair. It happened as a commemoration to the Holocaust. We should have an empty chair remembering those who perished in the Holocaust. There were those who said that we should have an empty chair commemorating those who were lost in the war in Gaza or people who are held hostage. However, the Rebbe's approach was exactly the opposite. Right? Yes, it's so beautiful that there are the fourth son who doesn't know who to ask at the Seder, but do you know how many fifth sons there are who are not even at the Seder? That's how disconnected that they feel. It's our job, it's our obligation, it's our responsibility to make sure that the fifth seat is filled. But how do you reach out to them? How do you bring a Jew who's so disconnected that he's not even at the Seder to a Seder? The answer is we have to believe that they belong there. We have to believe that they have a neshama, they have a soul that is so connected and one with our neshama that they are in the most literal sense our brother, our sister, our child. What would you not do for your brother, your sister, your child? If your child was away and was not planning on going to a Seder anywhere, would you not call him up? Would you not invite your child to make sure they came to your Seder? Would there not be so much incredible love in your hearts for that child who was not planning on going to Seder to bring him to a Seder? Absolutely, of course we would. Those who are distant. Look at them. It's very hard. But when we realize the truth, the reality is they have a neshama that is one with ours. They are our brothers. They are our sisters. Then we have the ability to speak to them, to talk to them, to warm them up, and hopefully bring them to that Seder and leave all the other garbage behind. I want to conclude with a powerful story from the Rebbe that expresses this idea. And I'm going to show you a video of the story being told by the person it happened to. But I want to remind you here that next week's class, Thursday, February 6th, is going to be in person. It's not going to be on Zoom. I'm going to be teaching the class in person in Shul, and then we're going to have a Farbrengen following the class, or the class itself will be a Farbrengen, because it is the yahrzeit of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe and the day where the 7th Rebbe became the Rebbe. We're going to have deli sandwiches from Deli on Crown. In order to make sure that happens, the sooner people RSVP, the better, because then I can actually order the sandwiches. We're charging $18 a person. If you're able to RSVP, it says RSVP by February 5th. Really, if you can RSVP earlier than that, it will be a huge help. All right, now I'm going to pull up the video here. All right.
This episode happened when I was in the Kollel, maybe 3-4 months. I was asked to see Rabbi Chadakov, who was the Rebbe's personal secretary, and also the head of the Kollel as well. And he told me that...
I'm pausing this for a second because on the screen that I'm watching it, it looks a little bit choppy. Is it choppy? Could someone comment if it's choppy? You could hear it, it's working? Okay, good.
There is a special amongst teenagers, but quite severe. And for some reason, I can't tell you why, the Rebbe personally and Rabbi 𝗧cie𝗱𝘆 took an extraordinary interest in helping this girl through this stage in her life. And so I was recruited to be the one to act upon the things that needed to be done and to take care of her in certain times, and whatever it was, I did. And perhaps 3 or 4 months, I spent 50% of my time working on this issue. Every step of the way, I didn't do a single thing without consultation with Rabbi 𝗧cie𝗱𝘆, and often he would consult with the Rebbe and come back with what should be done with this particular issue. This young girl wrote to the Rebbe directly, and every time she would be instructed, when they got an answer, to show me the answer, and I would discuss it with her. And what I want to describe is one particular exchange, which was an extraordinary exchange. I don't know if there's ever been a time when the Rebbe wrote something as direct as this. She wrote to the Rebbe about the pain, the anguish that she has, the emotional turmoil that's going on inside of her, and described it at length, a couple of pages. And the Rebbe used to answer her in a couple of hours, usually, maximum a day, she got an answer. So this answer comes out. And the answer, the Rebbe writes to her, amongst other things, that he feels her pain. He's empathetic, he empathizes with her. So she writes back a letter, and she says, Rebbe, I don't believe you. How can you feel my pain? You're not going through what I'm going through. What do you mean you write to me that you feel my pain? Within 2 hours, a response comes from the Rebbe. And this was the gist of the response. Unfortunately, I don't have it down word for word, but this is pretty much what it was. Feels that pain as if it was her own. And the last few words of the Rebbe were, Kach ani margish tza'ara. This is how I feel her pain. It had an impact on her, a very strong impact. We discussed it. And it began to open up to her the fact that the Rebbe was feeling what she was going through, and that the Rebbe was trying to help her, and slowly she began to respond to it. All I can say is that the result of the story, years later, she did grow up, things turned out, she got married, had a family and children, and many good things happened as a result. He put himself into it with such intensity. I mean, to expect the Rebbe to spend time answering back and forth over weeks, months, 2 months, or whatever it was. Always an answer.
So you see, of course, in this beautiful story, how the we have the ability to reach out and connect with them on the deepest possible level. Right? Any questions, comments, thoughts?